From the Land Grant University in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, this is the Closing Market Report. It is the 12th day of August 2025. It's USDA Report Day. This morning, the agency upped the ante for corn by 1 billion bushels. That's right, 1 billion more bushels of corn will be harvested this fall than had been expected. We'll talk about that number and how the agency arrived at it with Mike Zuzolo. He's at globalcomresearch.com out of Atchison, Kansas. We'll hear from the new Chancellor at the University of Illinois, Charles Isbell. I spent some time on Friday last week in Springfield with him at the Illinois State Fairgrounds. And then as we wrap up our time together, we'll take a look at the weather forecast too. We'll do that with Don Day from Day Weather in Cheyenne, Wyoming on this Tuesday edition of the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. It is public radio for the farming world, online on demand at willag.org. That's WILLAG.org.
Todd Gleason services are made available to WILL by University of Illinois Extension.
September corn for the day down 13.5 cents, 371.5. The settlement price December at 394.5, down 13.25, and the March at 412.25, 13 cents lower. November beans 21.5 cents higher. It finished at 10.32 3/4. January at 10.50 3/4, up 21.5, and soft red winter wheat 9.5 cents lower for the afternoon. In the December hard red December at 5.30, down 7.5. Mike Zuzolo at globalcomresearch.com out of Atchison, Kansas, now joins us to discuss this morning's USDA report. We can talk about the marketplace, Mike, but this is all about the extra 1 billion bushels that came in the corn market. And I don't know, is it all about the yield numbers were big, but it's a lot about the acreage changes. Can you tell me what you saw this morning?
Yeah, for me, I wouldn't have minded a 500,000 acreage move, maybe even 1 million acreage move, but to see a 2.5 million acreage decrease in harvested acres for soybeans going from 82.54 to 80.1, and then moving 2 million of that over into the corn so that we're, instead of being at 86.8, 88.7. That was the biggie for me, Todd. And fortunately for us, the USDA came in with a total demand increase for corn for 25-26 of almost 550 million bushels. Had they not done that, we could have been at a 2.3, 2.4 carryover, quite honestly. But yeah, that was the biggest issue, the biggest distinction to me. And I've had several phone calls since the reports come out from listeners within 50 miles of Will Radio and the station there in Champaign-Urbana saying, I just can't see 97.3 million planted acres and almost a 189 yield. I will say, though, in qualification and in heedance to what USDA puts out, they talk about their remote sensing satellite data. They talk about how they focus on the Corn Belt, but that imagery only goes through July 27. And I bet back on July 27, a lot of producers were saying this is going to be amazing in terms of yields in this last couple of weeks. Both too wet and too dry and disease and tar spot have started to really trim the yields back in anecdotal conversations. So I like to look at this report a little bit in the rearview mirror at this stage.
You mentioned July 27 for the satellite data. These numbers from today are for August 1, inclusive except for the FSA acreage changes. Those would have been dumped either last night or today, I believe. It's pretty likely, I suppose, that we won't see another change until maybe the January final figures.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with, we had talked about this last week where it sure seemed like it was very similar in terms of the price action, the market sentiment, even the price, actual prices themselves felt a lot like August of last year in that 2024 report, which ended up being able to put a low in the market. It's going to be interesting because we have a similar dynamic now, other than the tariffs, with a hotter, drier forecast in the weather. And so not only did the beans get the best of the reports by going below the lowest trade gas on U.S. ending stocks to 290 million, but we now have a hotter, drier bias in these weather models that the trade is picking up. So it's really up to the soybeans to lead the corn higher in the short term, the mantle being handed over from the wheat to the soybeans for me in the short term, since it's all about the bean crop size because of what you're talking about. That tightness of 2.5 million more acres, you tighten that yield up any more than what we just increased in terms of today's report, it's really going to make a big splash on the ending stocks number. And to go from 52.5 to 53.6, could we be right back at 52.5 next month? And all of a sudden we're talking about a 240, 250 carryover or 260 carryover. So that's something to really keep in mind here in the short term, to watch the soybeans to see if they can't give us a better price action and really kind of heal up the negativity of the corn market. And also with the idea that maybe corn's factored some of this in because of all the big yields being talked about before the numbers came out.
I did go back and take a look at the weekly charts for corn last year at the end of this month, but clearly it was based on what happened in that USDA report last year. On the soybean side, is there concern that China, for instance, who made a move against Canada today, finally, as it's related to the EV tariffs, the 100% that they put on last summer, and put a 75 or 78, I don't remember, percent tariff on canola from them. Do you think is that a signal to the president that they're willing not to buy U.S. soybeans as well, after he called for them to quadruple things earlier this week?
Yes, I believe that's the case. And I think this is where we just got some fresh data from both China and Brazil. And Brazil's February through July soybean exports going to shake out around 77 million tons. That's up about 7.5%. Almost 56 million of that 77 went to China. So they did about 56 million tons versus about 51 for the same time period last year. Their exports are up almost 10%, in other words, going straight to China versus last year. Argentina also shipped about 1.2 million out in July, and 92% of that went to China. The good news is the USDA is staying on top of this because they took the export number down to 1.705. That matches up with 2023 and the 2024 marketing year of 1.7. And that was the number I was using in my balance sheet, was 2023, 2024. So I like where they're at right now. I think we've got some insulation to losing any more Chinese business, and it's showing up on the supply demand balance sheets.
Okay, good news there then. Even if things do go sideways, you think we might have a good number out of USDA, or a fairly good number at this point, given what would be picked up by other nations. I take it that's how that's happening.
Correct.
Anything else in the S&D table for soybeans before we turn back to corn?
No, the only thing I would throw out is what you just brought up in terms of last year's lows. You're 100% right. The lows in corn and wheat both came in the week of the 26th of August, but we made the low in the soybeans this week at 936 and a quarter. I'd really like to see that same type of scenario happen and see this really strong weekly close on Friday, because that would make me feel a lot better about the S&D numbers from corn especially.
You, me, and every other farmer in the nation.
You're an analyst who's been hedging beans instead of corn, and you got a lot of work to do between now and harvest.
Total use for corn up 545 million bushels. Now, that's half of what the increase was. So some of that, of course, went into the ending stocks, a little bit more than half. They increased feed and residual 250. I guess that makes sense if you have a $3.90 cash corn price around the nation. That's what they're expecting for the year.
Yes, I that feed and residual is such a tough one because it's the leaky bucket. It's whatever's left over. And I was surprised that they cut it last year or last month. Now I'm glad they put it back in. But I like the fact that they continue to push up the ethanol number a little bit at a time, and like the fact that they jumped on the exports by about 200 million bushels, because you go back and look at last year and the fact that we're down to a 1.3 carryover now on 24-25. I think at one point we were 2.1 billion bushels at one point in the USDA numbers back, I want to say last December, January timeframe. So the demand just hasn't stopped. And this is where that commodity demand low led by the corn really does resonate in the numbers, in my opinion. It's just we can't see it yet because the supply side is so big. And that's where the other thing I really looked at hard, not to jump around from domestic to global too much, but I really looked hard at the 24, 25 corn numbers for Argentina, Brazil, Ukraine. We actually did see Ukraine's exports cut 1 million metric tons, but all the production numbers stayed the same. So I was very glad that nothing moved around on us there globally, because we could still keep getting that market share given our price.
Hey, thanks much. We'll talk with you again on Thursday for Commodity Week and Friday for the closing market report.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it.
That's Mike Zuzolo. He's with GlobalComResearch.com out of Atchison, Kansas. Stay with us here on Illinois Public Media at willag.org. In just a moment, we'll hear from the new Chancellor at the University of Illinois, Charles Isbell. I spoke with him last week during Ag Day at the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield. But first, we'll hear something directly related to the fairgrounds and the new Chancellor as well. I caught up with Jennifer Tirey, the Executive Director at the Illinois Pork Producers Association. She was working the Commodities Pavilion across from the grandstand and talking about the great food that they have there, farm-raised in the state of Illinois.
Tell me about State Fair and the Commodities Pavilion, the history here, what it means to places like the pork producers, the Illinois Beef Association, those that are involved, Illinois wine.
Yeah, I'd say one word, Todd: tradition. I think it becomes a tradition for our fairgoers to come and see us every year. I have had the privilege to be with the pork producers for 10 years, and I love talking with fairgoers. We've got 80-year-old couples that come in and stop at the pork patio. It just becomes such a thing that families come back every year, and that makes me proud to be able to work with them.
This morning, as you opened up at 10:30 a.m., one of the first people in line was the new Chancellor of the University of Illinois, Charles Isbell. He got your pork chop on a stick, and I have to admit, he'll be back. If not this year, next year, and the year after, and he'll be in your line again.
I love to hear that. I had an opportunity to meet your new Chancellor over on the director's line this morning at Ag Day, and he is such a great advocate of pork. He told me one of his favorite foods is bacon, and by him coming over and being one of the first people on our line today definitely shows me that he supports the pork industry and agriculture as a whole. And so I look forward to working with him in the future, and he can come back anytime he wants. We will always have a pork item for him to enjoy.
It says something about him on his 8th day as an employee at the University of Illinois that he's here at the State Fairgrounds for Ag Day.
It 100% does, and I know that with U of I being a land-grant institution, that partnership that U of I has with all of our commodity partners is so important. But to see the Chancellor be here in person and get a chance to talk to us and get a face with a name means so much going forward. And like you said, on your 8th day, that's amazing.
Who works the Commodity Pavilion?
The Commodity Pavilion is made up of about 300 volunteers that we utilize throughout the 10-day fair. Our biggest volunteers are our pork producers. It is a very grassroots organization, and our pork producers are the ones working the cashier booth, helping ravers. They're our cooks from Peoria, Illinois. It's all Illinois product that we're serving, and so we are definitely a grassroots volunteer organization during the fair.
What would you say to those who are coming to the fair that's never been here and come to the pavilion, which, by the way, is across from the grandstand?
Yeah, so if you've never been here, we really hope you come give us a try. We're right across from the grandstand. We have had so many people come in and compliment us on our product. We're proud to be able to serve it, and it's a really cost-effective. A lot of times you can come to the fair and just drop so much money. We are so proud to be able to offer budget-friendly for our families. So come on down and give us a try and support your Illinois pig farmers.
And these are 1-inch pork chops. These are not thin little pork chops.
Yeah, it's definitely a very substance piece of meat. You're going to enjoy the protein, you're going to have a great experience, and you're going to support our hog farmers along the way.
So the Chancellor did have a question. He wants to know what the secret seasoning is because it was so good. Can you tell us?
Yes, so he had a chop on a stick, which we utilize Riley's all-purpose seasoning. Riley's is actually headquartered in Pittsfield, Illinois, and we've worked with Riley's for years, and we are so proud to be able to continue to serve our chop on a stick with that seasoning. It's just a fan favorite.
Jennifer Tirey is the executive director of the Illinois Pork Producers Association. I caught up with her last Friday at the Illinois State Fair in Springfield. It runs through Sunday of this week. Do drop by the Commodities Pavilion. It is just across the street from the grandstand. They have some fantastic meals for you and your family, and the price is right. Now, Ms. Tirey mentioned the new Chancellor of the University of Illinois. He, too, was there on Ag Day, and I had an opportunity to talk with Charles Isbell about his career and his plans at the University of Illinois. I asked him first to tell me about himself and his pathway to the U of I.
My background is in two things. It's in machine learning and AI. I'm a computationalist, and in education.
Why did you choose that path? What caused you to do that particular path?
Well, two things, and they come together. One, I was always interested in what it meant to build a smart thing. I wanted to create data from Star Trek. I wanted to create HAL from 2000, well, a nice HAL from 2001. I wanted to build something that was smart, that would learn, that would be a friend to me as I grew up when I was young. I also knew from a very early age that I wanted to be an educator, that I wanted to teach. My teachers told me, you should go be a professor. So I said, sure, and I went off to be a professor.
What was your path like here to the University of Illinois as Chancellor?
So I've spent much of my time, even as I was doing research and as I was teaching, thinking about higher education, particularly public higher education, flagships, big impact on the state. And so very early in my career, I started doing administration. I was an associate dean and a dean and then eventually a provost in Wisconsin before I came here to be chancellor. And at the end of the day, I believe fundamentally that the mission of a large, even elite research public university is to serve the state and to serve the people.
Why the University of Illinois? What caused you to come here, to consider this as a place for the next step in your career?
Well, the University of Illinois is a special place. In my view, it's one of only a handful of places in the country that are large, that has an ag school, that has extension, public cares about research as well as education and bringing all of those things together. We're at a point in time when higher education is fundamentally under attack. People are asking questions about its value and what it can do for them and what it can really mean. And there's only a small number of places that can answer that question and take seriously the idea that you need to answer that question. And Illinois is one of those places. So I was very happy to be invited to interview here and absolutely over the moon to be asked to be the next chancellor.
Land grants were founded as ag and mechanics, agriculture and engineering, computer science part of that. How do you see the two missions of the campus in that form working together for agriculture? And then, of course, extension and a land grant is teaching, research, and outreach as well.
Well, I think what's really interesting about this place, what's interesting about Illinois is that it is better than most when it comes to interdisciplinary research, bringing together ACEs with computer science, with engineering, with a variety of disciplines that are out there. But I think importantly, it's not just the research that it's very good at, it's very good at the education. So Illinois was a pioneer for CS plus X. So some of the biggest programs in ACEs are CS plus agriculture, and bringing those people together so they can do interesting things. That's an educational mission, not just a research mission. When you combine that with something like extension, what you have is a direct connection to the people across the state, to every county, to every place that you can be. And that is itself not just a way of translating work that's out there, it's a way of listening to what people need, and it's a way of doing two-way communication and education.
And finally, I want to wrap up with something that you and I had talked about as it's related to agriculture and the farm community. Much has been computerized over the years. Machine learning is in place, sometimes referred to as AI. Mm-hmm. This is in your wheelhouse. You're in a different area. Tell me how you see what you have been in and how you see the two of those interconnecting in your own mind.
So I've spent most of my career doing AI and machine learning and specifically modeling humans, human behavior, predicting what they do, but also intervening, understanding how to help people to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. That seems very far removed from getting better yield on corn, or making certain that animals and livestock are able to do the things that they need to do. But they're actually strongly related. It's about modeling what people do, what plants do, and what everything happens over time. And so from my point of view, it's all the same thing. I plan on not just doing the Chancellor thing, but also working with people, working with students, working with postdocs, working with faculty to understand what we can do that's kind of interesting and new in this space.
Thank you for taking the time with me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Charles Isbell is the new chancellor at the University of Illinois. I spoke with him last Friday at the Illinois State Fairgrounds in Springfield. It was his 8th day in office. You're listening to the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. It is public radio for the farming world, online at willag.org, willag.org, where right now you can find this morning's USDA crop production and world agricultural supply and demand estimate reports. Look under the USDA tab. Let's check in on the weather forecast now. Don Day, at day weather in Cheyenne, Wyoming, left an update. He starts with the August weather.
Routine mid-August weather is the best way to describe what's coming in the next week or so. We're going to continue with warm August temperatures, although we don't expect anything crazy with the heat. Temperatures across most of the lower 48, including the Corn Belt and Midwest, will go back to some warmer than average conditions, with the real hot weather a little bit further west out into the plains of Nebraska, Kansas, up into the Dakotas, and into the southern plains of Oklahoma and northern Texas. Near to above average temperatures will be found elsewhere. Precipitation-wise, we will see a little bit of an eastward and northern shift of the heavier precipitation. We're looking at the central, northern, and eastern areas of the Corn Belt, getting into the better chances of rain. Rainfall amounts aren't going to be excessive. Looks like rainfall totals of anywhere from 3/4 to 1.5 inches to 2 inches across portions of Illinois, Indiana, into Ohio. The heavier rains will be more focused towards the Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the eastern Dakotas, with drier conditions out in the western plains areas. We're also watching tropical activity. We've got Tropical Storm Erin, which is possibly going to become a hurricane out in the Atlantic here in the days ahead. Whether or not that reaches the East Coast, we'll have to see, but there's other activity behind it that could affect the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic over the next 10 to 14 days.
That's Don Day. He's with day weather in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Joined us on this Tuesday edition of the Closing Market Report that came to you from Illinois Public Media. You may find those USDA reports online on our website right now, in fact, under the USDA tab, if you'd like, willag.org, willag.org. You have a great afternoon. I'm University of Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason.